All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to your all student advisor specialist panel and an Ask Me Anything session. So this morning's session, we have a panel of experts from the Faculty of Arts USS office. Start off, I am Joanna Mancher. I'm the Student Engagement and Communications Specialist. And I'm also a proud U of A Arts alumni. I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts honors degree here from the U of A. And I'm very excited to speak with all of you this morning and answer all your questions. Welcome to the Faculty of Arts. I'll go around and we'll get Kyle, Nathaniel, Jackie, Andre, and Taylor to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Ireland. I am the Recruitment and Communications Specialist with the Faculty of Arts, and I'll be here to answer any of your questions today.
Hello everyone, my name is Nathaniel. I'm a fourth year econ and political science double major. I'm also on arts work experience work term with the Faculty of Arts, so I'm a student recruitment, engagement, and communications intern.
Tante, everybody. I'm Jackie Belrose. I am the Indigenous Student Engagement and Recruitment Specialist for the Faculty of Arts. I'm also a U of A alumni. I have a BA Native Studies with a minor in anthropology. And welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're joining us from. Thank you for being here with us on Zoom. My name is Andre. I work mainly with international students in the Faculty of Arts. I've been with the faculty for about 7 years. Previously, I did my master's here at the U of A. I look forward to your questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Joseph. I'm the Student Services Assistant with the Faculty of Arts, and I'm also a proud U of A alumni with my Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology.
All right, so today, folks, we are going to be taking your questions live using the Q&A feature. So if you have a question for any one of our panelists, please type it into the Q&A. Those of you watching, you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that someone else has asked and you're like, yeah, I really want that one answered, please give it a thumbs up, and then we'll know that there's more than just one person wanting that particular question answered. We also have a number of questions prepped and ready to go because we know the questions that get asked all the time, and we've got a lot of information to share, but we are also very excited to answer your questions live. What I will say is we've got quite a number of people tuning in this morning. So if we are not able to answer your question live, please do email us at arts.undergrad@ualberta.ca. That is the email address for the Arts Undergraduate Student Services Office, and our team of advisors here will be able to answer your question or forward your question on to the right person to get you the answer. So we are going to start off. I'm going to get everybody to take a quick answer at this, asking, what mistakes do first year students make? So I'm going to start off with Andre, Taylor, Jackie, Kyle, and Nathaniel.
Okay. I would say a very common issue for new students is taking a full load, so taking 5 courses when that's not required for most of the arts programs. I can't think of a single one where you actually have to take 5 courses in your first term. You can always check with your department if you are in a specialized program to make sure that that's not required of you. It's tempting to take 5 courses. You know, you can finish your degree faster. You're a good student. You're admitted here for a reason. I would say be very mindful. It's a very different experience from high school. You do have 2 weeks at the start of the term where you can see how you're going, how your workload is shaping up. So start maybe with 3 or 4 courses. And keep in mind, you can add or drop courses until September 15th this year with no impact on your fees. Thanks.
I would say a common first year mistake that students make would be not talking to your professors. especially soon enough, depending on any assignments that you have or midterms that you're preparing for. Don't be afraid of your professors. They're there to help you. They're there to talk to you. And obviously we're going into this semester very differently, so you won't be able to visit them physically during their office hours. But professors will still have designated times to speak with their students, and they will go over that with you during the first week of classes. So definitely take advantage of talking to your professor. If you need help with anything, if you find that you're struggling with something, they're there to help you, and it's going to really improve your grade versus just waiting and seeing how it goes. So don't be afraid of them.
And my advice sometimes could be seen as controversial, but just don't party too much, honestly. It's a huge thing. I have colleagues that, or even when I was in school, they kind of regret all the partying they did in the beginning because their GPA got low and they had to try harder to get it back up and that kind of thing. Like, I mean, party all you want, but just keep in mind that it could affect how well you do, and it's nice to let go and relax and do all that, but at the same time, remember that you're only in university once, like your first year, right? So it's good to establish some good habits in the beginning. That's just my controversial advice.
Mine is really time management and taking time for yourself. So like Andre was saying, you don't have to take a full course load, though I would recommend that if you're considering a full course load or not, it's easier to have a full one and drop classes than it is to add them because they do fill up and then some of them might already be full. So if you're not sure and you have 5, that's fine. You can drop down to like 3 and you're still a full-time student. You can even go part-time in your first term if you want, especially considering things are a bit different this year. And the main thing with the time management though is making sure you don't have all your classes right next to each other, like right after, or assignments aren't going to be due all around the same time, because you will have syllabi that you're being given that tell you all the deadlines for all your assignments. So just make sure that you take time, not just for your coursework, but for yourself. Whatever that you do to decompress or recharge, whether it's watching movies, reading books, whatever you do, make sure that you set aside time for that, because then you'll perform better. No one performs well stressed. I didn't take this advice in my first year, and it was not fun for me because I had a whole bunch of classes right after each other. I did nothing but try to get through it, and it would have been better if I had taken breaks, spaced out my time a bit better, and I would have performed better in my first year. But I did survive first year. So if you are struggling at all, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are people here who want to help you. So yeah, just take care of yourself.
I agree with what everyone said up to this point, and if I would just add anything, I would add a little bit to Taylor's answer. I would say don't get in the habit of collecting red flags. So if you're not doing well in a specific class, and just making sure that doesn't become a routine and that doesn't become your new normal. Keep with your goals, keep with your standards, and if that means getting help from a professor, tutor, or any one of our resources on our campus, I would say go ahead and do just that.
All right, we have lots of questions, and I'm going to start with one. I'm gonna have Nathaniel jump in and give us his student perspective on this one. So basically, you guys are asked, there's a lot of you wondering, what action should we be taking for first year students if our profs haven't reached out to us about what the first day of class is going to look like? So again, this is where there's a big difference between high school and university. There's a lot more expectations put on you as students to hunt out the information on your own. And basically, the best place to start is eClass. So Andre answered this in the Q&A box already, but log into eClass. You do that with your CCID and your password that you use to log into Bear Tracks and all of your other student portals. Every class that you're registered in will have an eClass. Now, I'm sure there's some of them that profs are still updating eClass and adding information to eClass. But maybe Nathaniel, can you jump in about what you took classes in spring and summer? So how did that work in terms of how you were communicated to in advance before classes started?
So I would say pre-COVID and even during spring and summer through remote delivery, it hasn't necessarily changed too much in terms of like time before you're given your syllabus and anything like that. So classes don't start for another week, so you probably won't be receiving your syllabi until probably the few days prior to your first class, or maybe even on your first class. You may not even get access to e-class until your first lecture. So I would say stay patient, and once you get that information, just start going through coming up with a game plan. And that is a part of the reason why the ad drop deadline is September 15th and not September 1st. So you do have room to figure out what classes you like and don't. And it gives you about 2 weeks to get all that figured out.
All right, does anybody have anything else they want to jump in and add? Otherwise, I've got the next question that is really on people's minds. So it's a question about when is a good time to buy textbooks? I've heard conflicting things. Do you buy them now in advance? Do you buy them after the prof has talked about what to buy? So again, Nathaniel, I'm going to go to you because you're a current student, and then maybe I'll get Kyle to pipe in too. Oh, and Taylor too.
So one thing that I would say about textbooks, really common question, and I would say wait until you get your course syllabus. I know that on the bookstore's website and on Bear Tracks, you're able to see your textbook listing, but until you get your course syllabus, I would just hold on. And if you have any questions about a specific course and a specific textbook, to reach out to your instructor. In terms of getting it, in terms of actually receiving your books, the bookstore does deliver books. And if maybe for international students in a place where you may not be able to get it delivered, there's other retailers like Amazon who may be able to get your product to you, but there's also ebooks or e-textbooks that are available to students. And also keep in mind that professors are trying to give as much course materials and make them as available as possible to all students. So just maybe reaching out to each professor if you have any questions after receiving the syllabus or after attending your first lecture.
Yeah, it's much the same advice, is waiting. Also on your book list, when you go to the bookstore and you put in your ID number, it tells you which books are labeled as required and which ones are recommended. So required books, it's very likely you might need some of the information from them for your coursework or your assignments. But again, there are a lot of options sometimes with digital versions instead of the physical copies, and your professor will highlight which ones are most important. When it comes to recommended, those ones for sure, contact your professor to ask how much you need them for the class. If they're just extra readings, that means you won't really need to purchase them. You could get them from a library or an online resource temporarily. So recommended are not required, obviously, so you probably won't need those, and it can save you some money. And if you are getting any physical copies, buy used. There's no need for it to be brand new. Textbooks can be more expensive than any other book you'd buy, and the information doesn't change just because someone had it before you. So just remember that.
And I would encourage students to buy their textbooks after the first day of classes. Again, just to wait to read the syllabus, wait to hear from your professor, hear what is the necessary materials and what's like extra reading that if you're interested in, you can purchase if you want to. But for myself, in my very first semester, I thought that my first class schedule right before September 1st was going to be my only class schedule, and I wasn't going to change it at all. So I bought all of my textbooks before September 1st, brand new from the U of A library. And I wasted a lot of money. And by the end of my, once the ad drop deadline came at that year, I ended up switching my class schedule quite significantly, and I had a lot of textbooks that I had to either resell or they're still collecting dust in my closet. So if you know that you're in a class, like let's say you're in an English course and you know that you have to take this class, then maybe buy the textbook like September 2nd or September 3rd. If you know for sure that you have to take that class and you plan on taking it. One other thing to keep in mind is there are some assignments already in the first 2 weeks of classes, depending on the course that you're in. So you might need to buy a textbook early. So again, look into that syllabus and make sure that like you're not missing anything, and it's not detrimental if you don't have that textbook in the first week. But I also agree with what Kyle said. Make sure you try and buy used as much as possible, because there's a lot of students trying to resell their textbooks, and you'll get it at a discounted price, and it'll just be better financially.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in. We're kind of gonna switch gears a little bit. One of the more popular questions right now is, what is the difference between a degree in arts or science? For example, psychology is one of those departments that offers courses in arts and in science. So what's the difference? Is it the same degree? Do you get the same kind of jobs? And I'll get maybe Kyle to start with that, and then whoever else wants to jump in, and then I can add something too.
Specifically for psychology, the main differences are basic requirements. The core requirements are the same for science and art students for the BA or the BSc in psychology. Arts has different basic requirements. English, for instance, we only have to take one English class, whereas science students have to take two. Science might also make students take things in chemistry and bio and math, and that we don't have to do that in arts. You might have to take a second language if you don't already have a background in a second language. And then other than that, you'll take some non-arts type courses, which half of your psych classes will be science type. So therefore, that'll be completed. So we have very few basic requirements. Everything else that's core to psychology, those are the same on both lists. So as far as jobs go, it really depends what you go on into. If you go into different disciplines of psychology, they're going to lead you on different paths. Both can become psychologists. Both can go on to med school if they want. You still have access to all those classes if you want to become a psychiatrist. It really just depends, like master's programs and that. If you decide to go into like a neuroscience route, you will probably encounter some neuroscience, some biology, and that you'll need to take those classes to go into those routes. But as far as your core classes go, they won't require you to already know a lot about biology or chemistry to get in those classes. And anything else that's more optional within the psych discipline will tell you what classes you need to take before you go there. So it's mostly basic requirements. And that's the same with like all these different classes. They just have little tweaks to them. So I guess after when everyone else does around, I can explain some of those specializations, general, double majors, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I guess the only other thing that I'd add too is a reminder that as an art student, you actually have the choice of selecting a science minor. So there's really lots of ways to personalize your degree and make it what you want. So we often talk to students, you know, that there are so many other subject areas that are taught at university that like it's going to blow your mind. Like there's just stuff that's covered here that you don't even get to touch on in high school at all. So definitely be open to taking courses from different departments within the Faculty of Arts. Take stuff from different faculties like science, like ALES, Agriculture, Life and Environmental Sciences. When I was an art student, I really enjoyed playing soccer. So I actually took a couple of soccer classes through, back then it was phys ed, but now it's kinesiology, sport and recreation. So there's lots of different ways to make up a course packet of stuff that's interesting to you and that ultimately serves your goals. And Taylor and a few people have already touched on this, is you're likely going to change your mind. The stat out there is that 70% of students change their degree program at least once. So there's no gold star. You don't get like a special check mark on your degree if you graduate with the exact same degree that you started off or that you declared on day one. So, you know, do be open to what you're going to learn and what you're going to be exposed to, and I guarantee you'll be better for it. Let's see here. Okay, so kind of a different question here. Are there any specific supports or groups available for after degree or mature students in arts? That's a tough one. I don't think I've heard of a specific student group that targets after degree or mature students, but in one of our presentations we talk about how if you are the kind of person that sees a need, you have the capacity to start a group like that for yourself. So does anybody want to jump in about student groups or how to start a student group? I see maybe Kyle or...
I'll just start with this in case for people that they don't necessarily want to start a group, though you can. All of our supports have like multiple tiers and different options. So they're not just a one size fits all. So while there isn't a specific support for mature students are accounted for in all of our other supports, whether it's like for mental wellness, financial support, anything like that, everyone is accounted for. So there will be something that can accommodate your specific needs or the different circumstances that you're joining us in. And as far as like starting a group, you pay student union dues, and part of that goes to creating new clubs and organizations all the time. So that's already money that you're spending for it, and that gets used for the budgets of those groups. So you can start a group if there isn't one already, and you guys can, start organizing events. You could do it. You could set up your own kind of like what it's like for a mature student when they start at university, whatever it is that you want. But also check out the clubs list, because there are hundreds of clubs. So there might already be a group there, but it might be like centrally run, not faculty specific.
All right. So I'm going to get Jackie and Andre to talk about this a little bit, and then maybe if anyone else wants to jump in. So the question is about, how do you learn about opportunities outside the classroom, and how do you get involved in things? How do you grow and develop with some personal development? So I'll get Jackie and Andre to start, and then anyone else can jump in.
Well, there's always the opportunity to join the different student groups that are they're mostly for like social interaction, and there's so many different groups out there. I think there's a website, I think Nathaniel was mentioning it, Bears Den, and it has a list of all the organizations on campus and you could search by category. And there's some that are like geared towards mental health, which could they could host workshops that are, self-care and that kind of thing. And there's also the Academic Support Center has access to, or they provide workshops for personal growth type things, like even just writing skills or test anxiety and stuff like that. So those are always really useful. And there's also just like different engagement events that we try to host that are a lot to do with social interaction, but also getting students involved in non-academic activities, because you have to have that balance, right, in your life. So we definitely offer those kinds of things. And if there's ever events or workshops being held that are like speaker series and different things like that, we always have our ear to the ground and we send out the information to all the students. So just read your emails. They're actually written with a lot of thought and purpose. So that's one thing I would recommend. And if we find or see anything that we think the students would be interested in, we would definitely let them know via the emails. That's all I can really think of.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Jackie said. The newsletters that we send to students on a weekly basis, once that the term starts, are peppered with a lot of information. So there'll be newsletters for our undergrad students, there'll be newsletters for international students, and the information may be slightly different. So there will be a lot of useful tidbits in those. Other things to do, you will have to spend time on our websites. So there's no two ways about it. You'll have to look around and you have to understand what exactly it is that you want. If you want to volunteer, this term there may be less opportunities than usual, but there's still some stuff that you can do. And joining a student group is good, especially if you want to do it as a member first and maybe in some kind of leadership position. If you want to start your own group, as we already mentioned, that's also a fantastic idea and it will look really good on your CV as well. But keep an eye out for opportunities to volunteer at the university or in our faculty. If you do have questions about this and you want more details, you can always email us at artsand at ualberta.ca or artsrec@ualberta.ca, and we'll provide whatever information you require.
All right, I'm going to switch gears again here. We're going to get back to just the nuts and bolts of taking a degree. So within the Faculty of Arts, I'll start by just doing a quick overview that the Faculty of Arts actually offers 10 different distinct degree programs. The most, I don't want to say common to sort of, make it seem less important, but the vast majority of our students are registered in the BA program, the Bachelor of Arts. So within a Bachelor of Arts, every single student is required to choose a major, and that's about it. Then you have a choice of choosing to either add a double major. You can have a single major and a minor, a single major and 2 minors, a double major and a minor, a major and 5 certificates. There's so many different ways to put it all together. So I'm going to get Kyle and maybe Nathaniel to chat about this. What are the pros and cons related to taking a double major versus a major and a minor? So Kyle and Nathaniel.
So what I like to tell students is if they're not sure about a double major, pick a minor, start doing the courses. If you want to take more, you declare it as a double major. Our degree has so much flexibility and it's so open because those basic requirements I mentioned are actually very low compared to other programs because it's designed for your customization. It's very easy to fit in 2 majors. Now, how many courses that is will depend on the major. Some have very specific courses that they want you to take. Some give you a range. Some have like one specific class. Everything else is just different levels. So it really comes down to what combination you choose. But the pros of a double major is it's like you took 2 degrees because you completed the requirements for 2 separate majors. You're still completing the exact same courses as anyone else who has a single major in it. So you're doing the work for 2. So that shows off a specific set of knowledge in more than one area to employers, which is great. But also, like we said, you can have double majors and minors if you want. Whatever can fit in your degree, you can have. The title on your degree will likely only be majors because that's just the standard practice of the university, but your transcript and letters and that will all indicate everything else that you completed. So just remember that, and you don't have to be stuck with whatever you chose now. If you picked a major already, great. If you change it, that's fine too. If you are undeclared and picking majors, you can change them a couple times. It's fine. You declare majors that you plan on graduating in. So you apply to graduate, it will not matter what you picked in first year. It will matter what it is at the time that you apply to graduate. The pros to like minors being there is that there's less requirements. So you take fewer classes. It's a bit more flexible. So you can have one main focus with your major and you can add a minor or 2 there that are some side focuses. Like my main focus in arts was history and my minor was sociology. So I spent a little less time with sociology than I did history. But if I had taken a few more classes in sociology, it would have been a double major. So I wasn't that far off. So you have the ability to move around as you need to. So you might really want to take a double major and then decide to pull back and make one of them a minor because it just doesn't fit your plans or your schedule anymore.
Yeah, I really agree with everything that Kyle has said. I'm just going to add that a pro for me for taking a double major was all my electives would have been something that I was interested in. And it just so happened that I took enough courses to almost have met the major requirement. So I did choose to work it into my degree. I guess the con is if you're really interested in a lot of different classes, maybe fulfilling the double major requirement may be a little more difficult, especially if you want to take a lot of different electives. But I guess another pro would be, like Kyle said, having basically 2 degrees, but also having the skills of 2 degrees and taking that to whichever career or whatever you'd like to do with your degree, having 2 different set of skills and maybe being able to combine them would be great.
One thing that I'm going to add about this, I'm just going to clarify that the Bachelor of Arts degree and almost every other degree within the Faculty of Arts is a total of 120 credits. So when Kyle and Nathaniel have been talking about, it's almost like doing 2 degrees, basically when you decide a major, a minor, a certificate, any of those combinations, you're just redistributing your pie. You're saying, okay, half of my degree is going to be a major, you know, like it's just how you're going to make that total of 120 credits come together. There was another question in the chat that it was sort of like, you know, what's the workload? Is it more work? So the answer is no, because the thing is, you still have to take 120 credits. It's how you're choosing to sort of identify those 120 credits. Are you saying, you know, so when you graduate, you can say to someone, look, I did a deep dive and I really focused on political science and history, or I chose to study, you know, German and drama. You know, it's how you put your focus together. That being said, I would also tell everybody that the skills that you're going to learn as a BA student, as an arts student, regardless of your program, regardless of your major, in some ways they're going to be the same. You're going to learn how to be a critical thinker. You're going to learn how to research. You're going to learn how to communicate. So there's a lot of skills that you're going to learn regardless of the major that you take. One thing to note is that, again, there's a little bit of like strategizing. So this is where it can be a little bit daunting, because we don't have just a checklist. We don't say like, okay, come take all of this and here's your 4 years planned out from start to finish. But as Nathaniel was saying, he kind of realized that just the classes he was picking anyway fit into basically allowing him to be a major in a certain subject area. And all he needed to do was add in a couple more classes. So a lot of times, depending on what you're taking, you could almost have an entire certificate already under your belt just based on what you've chosen. And if you take one more course, then you've met all of those requirements. So some of it is just strategizing a little bit. And what I would say here is, this is the part of like, talk to people, talk to a USS advisor, talk to a department advisor and say, hey, I don't know what this certificate is about. Why would I take it? And talk to people. They'll be happy to share that information with you.
Joanna?
Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
I just wanted to add on about the certificates. So for students who are thinking, maybe I want to do a double major, maybe I want to do one major, two minors, how can I fit in all of these interesting areas and interesting avenues into my degree? You can also do that with the certificate. So if you don't want to do a double major, you don't have to do a double major. You can do one major, and then let's say you really wanted to take a philosophy focus, but you don't necessarily want to major in that. You could do a certificate in ethics. So if you want to incorporate intercultural communication, but you're not quite sure what major to pursue with that, you could do a certificate in international learning. If you want to do nonprofit work after your degree, you kind of want to get your feet wet in that area, maybe learn a bit about how nonprofit boards operate or how that sector works. You can pursue a community service engagement learning certificate. Pretty sure that's what it stands for. So take a look at those certificates because they also offer a lot. And it's something in addition to your degree, right? So on top of your BA degree, you will also receive a different certificate. So it does kind of add a bit more experiential learning opportunities to your degree and kind of gives you that little bit of pizzazz when you graduate. So definitely look into it. If you don't want to commit to a double major, you may be interested in pursuing a certificate in addition to whatever program you're in.
And just to add to that, because I'm actually new here, I came back in December to work for the U of A, and certificates were new since I've been gone, since I graduated, and it's no extra work. It's classes you were going to already take, filtered out through your degree, but if you take 4 of a certain pattern, you get a certificate, but you have to register for that certificate before or during the classes you're taking. So you're not doing any extra work to get a certificate added to your degree. It's classes you're taking anyway, but as long as you register and you take these certain classes, you get the certificate. I just wanted to clear that up because I was confused when I came back about certificates.
So I am going to get Nathaniel to talk about this, and then whichever other person wants to jump in. What's the hardest thing about majoring in poli-sci? How much time should you set aside for studying and reading? So Nathaniel, I'll get you to talk about poli-sci, but let's just talk about every major in general as well.
So I guess specifically for poli-sci, it is a little bit of reading. So if that's something that you're uncomfortable with, either try to get your skills up, or maybe that may not be the major for you. But in general, in terms of workload for courses, I think in the beginning, it's really, really important to have a plan, have a schedule, so you're able to have time to review your notes on a regular basis, because going to class is not just enough. Also knowing what to read and how to read it. So for example, is it worth your time to rewrite your textbook notes, or is it worth just skimming through? And I guess for each course that will look different based on the instructor. Also, I would just say taking the time to reach out, and whether that's a study group or going to resources. There's also tutoring centers and others like academic supports available to students. So if you're uncomfortable with a specific course or skill, or if you just want someone to help you through a simple concept, it's always worth reaching out and taking advantage of what's given to all students.
I would say first I'll start off with, when it comes to like planning your degrees, that we have the academic requirements tool in Bear Tracks to help you no matter what program you're in. We also are going to have these degree guides that are coming out in early September that will give you like baselines for every program, so you can kind of see what's going on with those. But when it comes to studying and how difficult a major is or any program, it's based on your strengths. Not everyone is in every single program. Like there are going to be some students who couldn't do well in one program versus another. Think of it the same way as some of you might be terrified of math. So you probably shouldn't be in a major that involves math. Same with, there are going to be some engineering students who are terrified of writing essays. You guys have different strengths, so you go with your strengths. So every major or minor is hard or easy depending on your skill set and your interests. Think of your major as your theme, because as we mentioned before, you're going to be gaining a lot of the same skills, but they're in different themes, different majors. The other thing with studying is figuring out your own study habits and what works for you. If reviewing your notes has been successful for you, then that's what you do after the class. There is no how many hours based on how much instruction. It depends on study until you know it. If you don't know it, you need to study more. If you already know it, then you don't need to keep studying it. So whatever techniques work for you, whether it's making analogies, references to something, flashcards, whatever works for you. And this is the time to kind of explore those new options and methods for studying, because university will be different. The main thing with studying is don't procrastinate. It doesn't work to study last minute. Again, I'll give you fair warning from my first degree. I actually have a science degree before my arts one. I procrastinated a lot, and it was not fun, because you can only learn so much in a day. So trying to learn your entire final in a day isn't a good idea. Leaving your essay to the last minute just makes it very stressful, and guaranteed, even if you pull off the essay, you will always feel you could have done better, knowing that you could have gotten a better grade. So if you do the work earlier, it'll be easier, like taking the books you need from the library, or downloading the resource you need early and just making notes on it, and then writing the essay later when it's closer to the deadline is fine. You've already done all the busy work, and now you can just write your essay. So you can do a lot of things in advance that help you along the way without actually having to do it as soon as it's assigned. You don't have to do everything as soon as it's assigned. Just don't leave it to the last minute. It will be a nightmare, I guarantee you. And if you don't believe me, then you'll procrastinate, and you'll believe me afterward because you realize what happened. So just don't do it. It doesn't work.
And I also just have a quick note to add for prioritizing study time. I once had a professor tell me this. I don't take it with a grain of salt, but for every hour of lecture time, you should study 3 hours. That's what a professor told me once. And honestly, it kind of made sense because there were some lectures where it was so condensed, they covered an entire unit or an entire module within one day. And you had to know everything within like about a week and a half before the midterm. So just so you know, if you're coming straight out of high school, it's very different. I would agree with that professor that for every 1 hour of lecture time, you should probably study for about 2 to 3 hours. Now, how reasonable or how realistic that is, I can't say because everyone's different. And of course, maybe you learn something super quickly and you don't need to put in those 3 hours. But that is kind of a timestamp if you want my own personal advice.
And I just wanted to add into there real quick. So with it, I agree with the 2 to 3 hours, depending on where you're at with the subject matter, but also that includes the readings. I don't like studying isn't just like going over what they said in the what they taught in the class, right? Studying means like you're gonna have to do a bunch of readings. You're gonna have to read a bunch of articles and different chapters and whatnot. That's part of that. So the 1 hour is class time. It's totally different. And then the 2 hours after the class time is for all that other stuff, because it's all self-motivated. It's like the teacher's not going to be like the prof's not going to be on you to complete this, to do this. It's all going to be all from yourself. So you have to motivate yourself. You have to get in the good habits. And that 2 to 3 hours seems like a lot, but it's not, because I'm not a speed reader. I need 2 hours to fully read and engage in material. So don't really think of it as too much extra stuff. It's stuff that you kind of just have to get done, that's kind of assigned to you, and it's up to you to do it. And just schedule a lot of time for yourself in between to do other things as well.
So one thing, there's a few comments about sort of, like online classes and what are online classes going to look like, and how to access the online classes. So basically log into eClass as soon as it's available to you. We mentioned at the start that some profs have their eClasses up and ready to go and you can access them right now for the classes you're enrolled in, and other profs aren't going to make those public until a couple of days before or even the first day of your class. And now in terms of tuning in or logging into lectures, some classes are going to do live lectures, so you'll need to sign in through Zoom or Google Meets or some other format like that. Again, it's really up to the professor's discretion. So this is that like part where it's on you, and you really do need to be on top and figure out, okay, which of my classes do I actually need to sign in at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, or which class nothing is live and everything is pre-recorded, and the prof will upload certain videos or certain materials as the course progresses. And everyone sort of touched on this already, but before you know it, your midterms are going to be on you. So before you know it, you're going to have an exam, you're going to have an essay, you're going to have something that's due. So the more you can stay on top of your coursework, or in some miracle, if you're actually ahead, like just keep going with it, because all of a sudden time will catch up on you. And also too, the more that you can be on top of your coursework, the more you're actually going to be able to engage with your fellow classmates. So one of the things that can be a little bit challenging about first year is oftentimes a number of the classes that are introductory level are going to be a little bit bigger. However, there are still a number of first year classes that are going to be smaller. So there was a question in the chat somewhere down here about the difference between lectures and seminars. And I would point that out as being one of the differences. Seminars tend to be smaller classes and lectures tend to be larger classes. So lectures, again, are a little bit more one directional. The prof stands at the front, or in this case, stands at the computer and delivers their lecture to the attendees. In a seminar, there's an expectation that there's more conversation between the students back to the professor, the students between students. Maybe Nathaniel, I'll get you to, we had a conversation about sort of like the difference between when classes have people that are really engaged and talking, and the difference when everyone's just sort of like, meh, tuned out. So what's your advice for students about how to get involved in their classes?
Oh my goodness. So students in lectures would, the prof would ask a question and everyone would just have like their microphone and their cameras off, and you don't know if the person is even on the other side of the screen. So like what kind of class is it if you don't even know if people are even attending? Like they could just have their device on. So I think as a measure of accountability for me, and I find this really helpful, I turn my camera on all the time. because I guess the fear of having other people watch me makes me focus a little more. So I would recommend that if you're comfortable, or if not, have some sort of accountability measure to keep yourself engaged so that you do well. And I can say this confidently for most courses, if not all of them, the less engaged you are, the less well, or the less likely you will be to succeed. So the more engaged you are and the more work you put in is will reflect your grade.
All right, so one of the next questions in the chat that's really popular is, what is the Faculty of Arts cohort all about, and when will we be using it? So this is a special floor. So this is sort of a weird, there's a lot of transition and things are changing this year because of COVID. I mean, surprise, surprise, everything's different. In the past, the Faculty of Arts cohort was a special floor in residence in Lister, and it was meant for students living in residence, and it was a group of students for the Faculty of Arts. So that group is the same this year. And if I'm assuming because you're asking this, that means you're in the cohort, and your floor leader virtual real, her name is Julia Walsh. And if you haven't gotten an email from her, she'll be sending one out shortly, and there'll be a welcome event tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And if you haven't, you can email arts.undergrad@ualberta.ca, and we'll be sure to forward your email off to Julia and make sure that you're included in that. But basically, you know, this is sort of one of those ways of trying to make community. So whatever you're interested in, like, I don't know, let's say you're poli-sci student. The poli-sci department has their own undergraduate student association. Join, look them up, try to find them on social media, get in touch with them, go to their website, their Facebook group, get on their newsletters, follow what they're doing. Put yourself out there. Just be like, hey, I'm a drama student, I'm a sociology student, I'm an anthro student. How do I get involved? How do I make connections with the people that are in the program with me? And the arts cohort floor is one of those groups and one of those ways to connect students to each other. Okay, so we kind of talked about this before, but we'll maybe revisit it. If somebody wants to take a major and a minor at the same time, do we need to pre-register, or do we just enroll in classes, earn the credits, and then transfer? So what I'm going to say is, this is the tricky part. Words can sometimes mean very different things and really specific things. So the word transfer is really going to be related to transferring from one degree program to another, either within the Faculty of Arts or transferring to faculties. So basically, if your goal is to transfer into a new faculty, and you're, you know, because you've either figured out that that really is what you want to pursue, or that was always your intention, you want to make sure you're taking courses that are going to get you into the faculty and that associated program that you want. Now, in terms of majors and minors within the Faculty of Arts, all that is a Google form. That's easy peasy. You don't need to pay an application fee. You don't need to do anything sort of quote unquote special. So in that regard, you can take a look at what your major is that you're currently in, what major you want to be in, and vice versa, and just start taking those courses. You do at one point need to make sure you actually declare and have that listed properly, because if you don't, then you won't be eligible to graduate. This is what we were talking about in terms of making sure you meet the requirements. There's core requirements that all art students have to meet, and then depending on which major you've chosen and any other components, whether a second major, a minor, certificate, if you want to graduate with those, you need to make sure A, they're declared, and 2, you've met the requirements, and then 3, at the very end, you actually apply to graduate. Because if you don't, we just assume you want to keep staying and taking more classes. So let's go back to balancing life and workload. So let's get Nathaniel to chat, and then maybe Jackie and Andre. So what are the tips for balancing academics, extracurricular activities, and social life?
I would say first, it's really important to understand like the circumstances you're in and like what you really have time for. and what you make your priority. So like, for example, if you just want to get through school, then like make that your priority. If you have to live to work, then that also is another conflicting priority. So I think first understanding what you can take on and what is reasonable, and also not burning yourself out completely. So for me, for example, I recently joined a student group, OASIS, which is your faculty association. So I joined because I thought I needed to develop some more writing and skills and wanted to meet some more students. So I joined that because I had the time to do it. There's also a huge variety of different like student groups. So there's some that are equity seeking, there's some that are cultural, there are some that are just for fun. So like you can play dodgeball. I mean, in another pre-COVID world, but there's really something for everyone, but just making sure that you have in terms of balance, asking yourself, will this exhaust me? Can I take this on? Is this too much? And let's say that you didn't expect it to be as much as it is, then realizing, okay, taking a step back and thinking, what can I change? What help do I need?
I think honestly, balancing your life is like, it's super important, because if you're not like mentally healthy, physically healthy, you're not going to be successful in your degree, because it is a bit stressful. Like there's a lot of work and you have to focus. So you do have to take that extra time for yourself. Go get a pedicure, or like plan a girls' night. I don't know, what do guys do? I don't know, have a beer, barbecue, whatever. Like, you know, like those kind of things. Like you have to do the self-care. You have to. It's very important. Make sure you schedule that in your week with the rest of your stuff. Also, one of the things I would recommend, or like one of my pieces of advice in terms of balancing all of that and being successful, is really focus on like, okay, in 5 years, is this going to matter, right? This little thing, this little problem. Probably not. There's certain things you can just, you know, forget about. And stuff relating to school and your family, prioritize. These other things, they could probably wait a year or 2 or 4, you know, like some things aren't as important as the degree is going to last you forever, you know. So think about that when you're trying to decide kind of what to prioritize in terms of I'll just, like, for example, I spent way too much time on a boyfriend that no longer exists in my first year, second year. That was a waste of time and energy. And I'm just saying, don't do that. Really think about what's going to matter later. And of course, you can't always know, but at the you can kind of ask yourself and just follow your instinct of what you feel you need in this point in your life, and what's going to carry you forward.
And I'll echo what Jackie said, although I would say that boyfriends, girlfriends, fair enough. I mean, I finished my first degree decades ago, so it doesn't apply. But some of the friends and connections that you make at university will be with you for the rest of your life. Like I'm still in touch with people that I lived with at university, who were in my hall of residence or in my house in the second, third year. So keep that in mind. Other things. We do not mandate that students should finish their degree in 4 years. So this means that you can stagger it. You can, I think the average completion time is 4.7 years. So you can take more than 4 years, and everyone is different. There's going to be a lot of people that you meet that seem to be hyper involved, hyperactive. You can do that, but you don't need to do that. So do not feel pressured to do everything, to be everywhere. For some of us, myself included, you can have 1 or 2 hobbies and you concentrate on those, and that's what you do. Like you have your specializations. You're not in all these social groups. You don't have to do that. if you don't want it, or if you feel that it's challenging and it's impacting other areas of your life. And of course, again, with the courses, if you take 5 and you think, whoa, this is a bit much, drop to 4, take a course maybe in spring or summer, or just say 4.5 years, 5 years, that's okay. I'm still getting a degree. I'm still getting the knowledge. I'm still making connections.
Okay, we are getting down to our last 4 minutes, so I'm going to try to answer a bunch of questions really fast here. So in terms of midterms and finals, oftentimes in arts, if you have a kind of a written assignment, some of those will just have a deadline that you need to submit. Other times there are set times for you to be able to do your exams. I'll get Nathaniel to pop in with a couple of answers about the ways different exams can be offered. But if you have a learning disability or something similar to that, you can apply for, what's the word I'm looking for? There are some supports available to students that have registered disabilities or accessibility issues. So we'll get that added into the chat, or we'll include that in one of the newsletters right away, and make sure that you're aware that you can apply and use that. Give yourself every advantage possible. Do not think that you are the only one that, you know, needs more time because you're dyslexic or you have test anxiety. Please use every resource available to you. We want you to succeed. We want you to do well in all of your courses. Does the U of A use Microsoft Office for some of his courses? Not quite sure what you mean by that, but basically the U of A uses a lot of Google platforms. So oftentimes if there's any collaborative work that you'll be doing in class, it'll be through the Google suite of documents. So Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, things like that. Of course, you know, Microsoft Office is a pretty standard tool that people do work on their own for. How do online labs work? Again, it's going to be like online courses. Everyone's been really creative in trying to figure out how to make sure that information is shared with students, projects are set up in a way that things happen. So again, it's up to the prof, but everyone has that sorted out, and they'll tell you more exactly what that looks like for their particular class or that subject matter on the first day of classes. And just to reiterate, there's a few questions in the chat about what to do if classes are booked or full. So here's the thing, here's a tip. If you have a class on your watch list, the notifications about spots being made available only come out, I think it's on the hour or on the hour and every half hour. But you need to constantly be looking because what happens is it really is luck of the draw. Like if you get that notification, so does everybody else who's listed on that watch list. There will be a lot of movement in the first 2 weeks of classes. So if there are classes that you want to be taking, just keep looking, keep going into Bear Tracks to see if there's a spot available. There was a question about English. You do not have to take your junior level English class in your first year. There's no quote unquote ramifications for not taking it until later on. One thing I would though suggest is probably trying to do it sooner than later, because the skills that you're going to learn in those English classes will help you with the rest of your degree. And it's also a requirement. So you don't want to leave it until your last year and then all of a sudden be like, oh shoot, I forgot about needing to do an English class and then having to fit that in. So we are at time. I know there were lots of questions that didn't get answered. I would encourage all of you attendees to tune into the department sessions that are happening for the rest of the day today, as well as Wednesday and Thursday. There's an all student panel tomorrow, so you can ask some of your questions tomorrow afternoon to a panel of students. Please do take a look through the e-class, the Faculty of Arts New Student e-class. We've got lots of information and answers there. And again, as always, please do send an email to arts.undergrad@ualberta.ca. Please recognize that it is a really busy time and there's lots of questions being asked, especially because we keep telling everybody to email us. So do give us a little bit of time to get back to you. We will do our best to answer as quickly as possible. But yes, get in touch, and thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and hope to see you at our next sessions. Bye now.